it has to have gameplay. It has to have something in it. It's not how it looks. It's like, great, it looks just as good as the other game, you know?
Right.
It looks photorealistic, whatever terms you want to use for that. But nowadays, for me, it's the cost of that game, where it's like, well, if I'm going to put this money out, I definitely want to have the hours I'm going to spend doing it. I mean, it's just like you reading a book, right?
Oh yeah.
You're going to sit there and read it, and however fast you read or whatnot, that's how much time you put into it. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with games. It's how much time is this going to actually be there? Because there's I could get into a whole other thing about, you know, one of the reasons I play games is they are my books. These are my stories. You know, when I first started playing games, it was you had to be literate. There was no voice actors for this. You had to read the text coming at you, and sometimes it was a wall. Sometimes you were going through it just like a book, and that's honestly how it was. So it turned into my books, but it was a visual interpretation, you know. The one thing too about using your imagination while you're reading, you know, when you read books and stuff, that's fun and all, but to me, being able to interact and you control that character, you're moving and you're going through there, and that was the biggest thing. But to kind of explain to you the differences, yeah, there's a big difference between somebody who's just going to buy something because it looks pretty versus what's the context of it. And like I said, 10 years ago, the technology was just coming up, and it was graphics. You were just like, oh, this looks great. Whereas now, it's something you're used to. You're like, oh, it looks good. Now what's in it? You know, kind of thing. So that's one of the ways I was going to go about it. Yeah, I definitely have to say I have, because these fantasy stories, any stories, are taken off experiences, whether it be the authors or looking back at like a lot of mythology, right, and looking through that, and those still have morals and ethics and things going through there. So when you're playing games even today, and you're looking at that, they teach those morals, and you can see that. I mean, it takes you to understand what you're reading too, and not just going through it to go that. Some of the games I play, they make you go through those morals. Like they ask you, do you have a question? You have a choice. You know, do you let somebody live or die? And you're playing a fantasy game. You're playing the hero, right? You're running around. So you've got these people's lives in your hands. You know, it's like, well, what kind of choices do you make? You know, and those I guess a little bit more adult themed kind of games that go like that. But for like younger audiences, you know, that really makes you, as a kid, for me, it really does make you think, because you know. One of those things where you're like, I don't know, I really don't know how I should feel about this, and then that's one of those life lessons that you end up learning. And honestly, I mean, I've experienced that as becoming an adult. You know, even in the Air Force, you know, I'm like, wow, that makes sense now. You know, it's like, oh, something that was portrayed in a game that actually meant something came back, and that's exactly how it would go. And yeah, I'd say there's been a lot of morals and life lessons, and I'll admit it, I'm a sucker for love stories. And so one of the big predominant things I learned about was, you know, love, and it kind of helped, I wouldn't say shape what I think about love, but it made me go, I kind of got attached to that kind of genre because of this kind of stuff. So
that's interesting.
I would respect your opinion first of all. Then I would obviously disagree with you heavily, because you have to look. There's a lot more to video games than just what you already spoke to. There's two big things there, and it's only in a couple of things in there, but the violence is in there. There's violence in anything. I mean, I could argue the same thing. Don't go watch the Avengers. You're just gonna see things blow up, people die, people killing, and all that. same aspect. As for the pornography and stuff like that, yes, there's over sexualization. We could get into that whole conversation, but to me, it's there's a lot more to it. And also one thing that I don't listen to regular music, and this is kind of a tangent. I love listening to the radio station. I listen to all kinds of music, but I prefer my soundtracks. And most of my library is video game soundtracks because it is the most beautiful pieces of orchestrated music you'll ever hear. 50 people pour their heart and their souls playing their instruments to make this music and all these games, and it's phenomenal. And that's one aspect of it that gets overlooked because of that, what they said right there. Yeah.
Right.
The violence, they see it, and the media, I guess I could maybe say, is to blame to that because that gets blown up. They blow that out of proportion, so you don't look at it and say, well, what is the good things about these games?
Right.
What are you learning out of that? And that's where I would show this person, doing this idea. I would show them. I go, well, here's some music from this. Here's some songs, and I'd say, would you believe me that came from a game? And I'd say 9 times out of 10, they'd probably tell me no. They didn't know that. And then again, what's the difference of you reading a good story, a book that has, let's say you're reading a detective novel about a woman who got raped and killed or something like that, right? What's the difference from them reading that, and saying, well, that's a waste of time because of whatever, right? It's kind of the same context if you look at it that way. And there aren't that many games that I have played personally, and I don't even think they're out on the market, but I mean, they're real life scenarios, but they're not putting in there because it's not entertainment, right?
Right.
Games are meant not a waste of time to me to answer that question because they are my books. I play the fantasy genre, I play these, and the stories that come out of that, these are my books in a sense, and I do correlate that there. It's just my difference is I'm actually controlling this character and taking them from one place to the other. It's not just a chapter skip. I have control of getting that character from chapter 1 to chapter 2 because I'm on the road. I'm fighting the monsters or whatever like that. I'm not saying that there's not real life implications that come in there like you mentioned, but it's just one of those things. It's not a waste of time. Would you walk up to someone who's reading a book and slam it in their face? If that's a waste of time, go do something else. I wouldn't, because again, it's the same thing. That's how I look at it. It is that same thing of I'm playing a game, I'm still reading, I'm interacting. There's critical thinking involved, there's puzzles in games, there's a lot of things that you have to, not to mention you have to learn how to play the game. You don't just pop it in. I don't throw in a new RPG and go, I know how to play this game. No, the rules are different every time, so you have to get to know that. You have to know how to play it at that point. And it's just the same thing when you're picking up a book. Authors' styles are different. Some authors are really hard to read, but they know how to drive you in. Even if they're hard to read, you'll still read it, right?
Yep.
So exactly, and that's the same thing here. It doesn't matter which one's different. It's not a waste of time. That's what I would tell her. It's not a waste of time. And I have, again, the story element to back me up on that, the music to back, some of the visuals too. Some games you can literally sit in there and look out at a painted landscape and you just get lost in it. So, like I said, I would definitely disagree with their opinion.
Right,
but
yeah.
I would say, they're allowed to have it just like I'm allowed to have mine. So. Oh, of course. Again, critical thinking is a one thing about it, because you go into a scenario in a game. I'm trying to give you a specific example. I mean, I've played so many games where you're in a turn-based, or it's kind of like a chessboard, right? And it's either you want to win it without anyone dying, right? And again, we're coming back to the combat, because it's a lot of it. It's just the strategery about it, the going about, how do I get around this foe, or is it time to run? You analyzing the situation and knowing where you're at in a game can definitely correlate to a lot of, when you're out there in a situation. For me, again, I worked on airplanes for the Air Force, and all of that, all those skills, the critical thinking about being able to work through a problem, seeing a problem, stuff like that. it's a whole nother topic in it, but MMOs right now, the massive multiplayer onlines. For instance, I played World of Warcraft for 10 years. I just finally quit it this past year because it just stopped being fun for me. And
Right.
it was this job, but one thing in there, I've led guilds, I've led people, I have organized people showing up to show up for raid nights. At a certain time you show up, you get to come in, you go and you do it, and it's that knit where you're controlling people's actions, you're telling people those leadership skills. That stuff definitely correlates out into the real world, because when you go, like, you're in a job looking for a job interview, and it actually came up in an article just recently, I think over the past year, someone put their credentials in their resume that they had led something in World of Warcraft. And I think that's totally viable because, again, I had 25 people. For me specifically, I ran a heroic guild 4 years ago. In that guild, I had to have all these people show up, and they all had to do their jobs. People had to know when to cast certain things, at what time, where to move to, how to move it. And when you're the one telling people how to do that, again, that's just that leadership quality. People trust you to know what you're doing to do it, and that's the same way out in the workforce. At least I would hope so. I mean, I don't think you walk up to your boss not hope that he doesn't know what he's doing. Sometimes that's the case, but that the communication, not only, I mean, I'm talking to people, right? I'm communicating with people, I'm making those relationships, and I have so many friends over there. So not only that, does it help me be confident in when I'm out in a job interview or I'm in the job environment, I can speak to my coworkers. I'm not just afraid of someone. I'm not shy because, there's the barrier of the internet, but I can still communicate with people. And I can't say anything but good things about that, so. That honestly is a real dependent on my mood, obviously. I mean, there are definitely days where, you've had a hard day, you don't want to come out. All I want to do is sit down and play a game, and actually just get it back into something. And again, I'm an RPGer, so I play a lot more of the role player games where was I at, and I got to continue that. It's like, okay, so where was I at in the story, and you just want to just lose yourself in that. It's kind of your getaway, and that's what it is, and I guess it'd be my personal opinion again here is, it's better than me drinking alcohol and causing trouble and stuff like that, even at my age. But it's still to me better. I'm not hurting anyone. I sit down and just waste time. At that point, when that mood, I'm wasting time.
I think we all waste a certain amount of time. It doesn't have to be in video games.
Yeah. Like I said, it depends on what it is for the people. But just for me, gaming, it's there because, again, that's where I put a lot of my time and my effort into it.